just at Toronto FC, the club that he's at, man, there's just so much happening in, behind the scenes basically. And I don't know how that's going to impact him. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of The Corner Flag. And you are here with your favorite host once again, Deshane. And as you know, we do shoot all of our episodes from Isolo Studios. So if you are in Pretoria, you definitely know where to be if you're a media person and you need a plug. And in today's episode, we will be, of course, looking at the MLS. And the season is about to start, of course, or I guess in this case, it has kind of started. Messi and his compatriots, of course, winning 2-0 against Real Salt Lake. But yeah, the rest of the teams are about to start as well. And we will be looking at our South Africans, of course, who do play in this league and who we should be following and supporting throughout the season. And we're going to go ahead and start over with our, I guess I'm going to rank them. Number 5. We're not really ranking them. But with our 5th player, of course, we're looking at Ntsabeleng. And Ntsabeleng has been in the MLS forever, right? He's basically a veteran in this league, plays his football for FC Dallas, and he's been there forever. I think he's basically our South African who's been there the longest. But unfortunately, he's never really gotten a Bafana call-up. But he has been very, very consistent out in the MLS. And as I said, he is the first one, like our original South African in the MLS. It's just a shame that he's just never gotten a call up. But it is a tough position that he plays out in that midfield. Of course, we do have the likes of Botabo Mokoena and Pepelo Setole, Luke Leroux. You know, the list goes on. And in the past, we even hear your Bongani Zungus who played in that position, your Andile Jalis who played in that position. So it was always really, really stacked in the midfield. Even now, we're looking at Blom, who is also ironically coming up later on this list. But he's not getting a shot. But Tabutele is not getting a shot. And these are all very, very good players, you know. But Tusi Obas as well. The one time he played, you know, he made a name for himself and now he's on the peripheral. So the center mid position has been very, very stacked, and it's a tough position to crack, especially in the Bafana fold. But yeah, he's always been playing the South African flag high, and we're really, really proud of Ntsabeleng. And our next player, who does form the next part of our list, who we didn't mention, is Blom, who plays his football out for St. Louis City. And he's ironically coached by Bradley Carnell, who's another South African. And ironically, these guys won the league last season. It was their first season in the league. They're an expansion team, and wow, did they have a magnificent season last season. Nobody, I don't think anybody expected the season that they would have. They won the first game, and it's like, oh, okay, cool, you guys did well. And then they won the second game, it's like, okay, nah, you know. And then they won the third game, and then the 4th game, and it's like the 5th game, the 6th game, the 7th game, and it's like, okay, you know. So yeah, they did a really, really good job bringing on Blom, who's also solidified his place in the team. The stopper, of course, playing as a defensive midfielder. And yeah, I think he's grown a lot in the league. Compared to how he played at Kaizer Chiefs, he does express himself a lot more. He holds on to the ball, dictates a little bit of play. Of course, that's the basic things that we've always known him to do as the stopper. You know, cutting out play, reading the play, interceptions, of course. But right now, he's starting to become a bit of a playmaker. So I think it's great to see what kind of play he's developing into, and it'll be a big season for him, and it'll be, you know, a big responsibility for them to try to replicate the results that they had last season. I don't think necessarily that they're going to win it again, but I do think that they are going to give a good account of themselves, of course. So we will be looking forward to that. And yeah, that brings us to the end of Blom, of course. And for the next player that we will be mentioning, of course, is Hlongwane. And Hlongwane also had a brilliant season last season. It was a tough, season when they started out. Of course, Emmanuel Reynoso, the main player, the biggest player that they have, was out for majority of the season, and he is their playmaker. So it was up to Bongukuhle and a few other of the forwards. Timo Pukki, I don't think, had arrived at the time. So they're playing, I think his name is Arriaga, if I'm not mistaken. But he's a young player, he's not really experienced. He is fast, has a lot of, power, but not really critical, So it was kind of like a glaring thing that they had to fix. Timo Puki, of course, coming from Norwich City, coming into that number 9 position, also started off a little bit slow, but had a brilliant season. But Hlongwane, of course, wow, my God, especially in the first part of the season, played really well, especially because they needed him. He scored a brace every other game, I believe, in the first part of the season. So it was a really great season for him. And out in Leagues Cup, of course, finished as the second highest scorer behind Lionel Messi. So that should tell you how great of a season that he had. Hopefully he will replicate the season, but I do think he just has to, up the notch a little bit in terms of the numbers that he gives, in terms of the goals and assists. He did well last season, especially compared to the previous season where he only ended with like 3 goals, if I'm not mistaken. But this season, it's he is a main player at Minnesota United, always a starting player alongside Son Ben on the other side, and Reynoso that we mentioned, Timo Puki out as the spearhead, and Robin Lard and Taylor out in the midfield, of course, just to give them a bit of support. But a really good group. They didn't really bring in too many players as well, so it's kind of a situation where they have a good unit of players, but they having issues with the coach, right? They changed the coach, Adrian Heath, of course, leaving the club, and he is the coach that brought Hlongwane to the team. But he gave a lot of faith in him, had a lot of faith in him, gave him a lot of opportunities. So I hope that the new coach who comes in is going to do the same. Although the fact that they haven't really fixed the situation, especially so close to when the games are supposed to start, it's a bit of an issue, right? It's a bit of a glaring issue. Yes, Cameron Knowles, of course, affiliated with the team as the interim coach, has been doing a brilliant job, has been doing the most, of course, coming up with new tactics and, just bringing the team together. But if he's not the long-term solution, I don't know how that's going to work out. So hopefully they'll give a good account of themselves this season. And, from Bongi's perspective, just a consistent season. It started off really good, but it kind of just stepped off a little bit towards the latter part of the season. So I'd just like to see him have a big season all throughout. And I think that'll be, just one of the catalysts that will, facilitate his moves to Europe, of course. But yeah, that's our boy at Minnesota United. And the last player that we're going to talk about, of course, is Cassius, mailula. Also had a not so good season last season, right? Barely played, only had a handful of substitute appearances. But yeah, the boy that we're supporting, we definitely know his qualities, of course, coming from Mamelodi Sundowns. But yeah, it's going to be a tough season for him, I think. Just at Toronto FC, the club that he's at, man, there's just so much happening in, behind the scenes, basically. And I don't know how that's going to impact him. There's a coach that came in, of course, John Herdman, has never coached club football before, was the coach of the Canadian national team. But yeah, as I said, doesn't have too many credentials as a club coach, I would say, right? And is also not the coach that brought Cassius on. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult whenever the coach who doesn't bring you in leaves. Then, it's kind of up in the air. And also the other situation with the 2 Italians, Lorenzo Insigne and, Benedeschi, of course. They wanted to leave in the off season, but there's just been problems moving them, looking at the wages that that they would have to pay, the ages that these players are at. And yeah, it's just a really weird situation at Toronto FC right now. And I would say that Cassius is kind of like competing with Lorenzo Insigne for the position. And as much as the output that the 2 Italians haven't been putting out hasn't been that much, I don't necessarily see them putting Cassius ahead of these guys. And even in the forward line, there's just so many players. Dylan Kerr, Osorio, they are center forwards, so I guess maybe they're not direct competition for Cassius. But Cassius, as we know, can play anywhere on the front 3. So I think maybe to his credit, because he's so versatile, he can play anywhere on the front 3 and as a central attacking midfielder. But he's not a starter, so that's a concern for me. I really would have loved to see him play at a team where he would have gotten a lot more game time, such as Hlongwane when he started Minnesota United. You know, it took him a whole season to get his feet. You know, he was there in terms of energy, but didn't really contribute that much to the team. But in the second season, he became one of the players that you know, they can rely on. So I don't really know if Cassius is going to get that type of opportunity if Lorenzo and Lorenzo Insigne, of course, and Benedeschi are there. It's going to be a tough one for him, you know. But, you know, we're going to wish him the best of luck. Hopefully, he will do the most out at Toronto FC. And the last player that we're going to mention on our list, of course, is Oluwetu Makhanya. And Oluwetu, of course, coming from Stellenbosch, also didn't, you know, feature too much last season. I do believe he also came on as part of the Under-22 initiative of Philadelphia Union. And yeah, he played with the reserves, but I think it was just more so to get him acclimated with the league, and he is kind of young, so just to throw him into the deep end would have been a little bit unfair for the boy. But I do think this time, this season, of course, he is getting integrated with the first team, so he might get a few more opportunities, might be a bit of an impact player such as Cassius. We might be able to see him, or we might expect to see him a lot more from the bench coming on. But yeah, with Oluwetu, also a quality player. I think, you know, based on where he's at, he's going to gain a lot of experience. But, you know, it's going to be a little bit tough for him. But I think just, you know, the level that he's at, where he's going to be playing at in the American League, and just for, you know, Bafana in the South African, you know, football league as a prospect is going to be good. I think he should get integrated into the under-23s, especially if he does play regular team football. If he gets into the under-23s, it'll be good for him. Just playing with, you know, other players who are around his age, and we have a lot of star players around that age also. You know, your Kunus are in there, your Ayanda Seshubas are in there, so it'll be great to formulate a young team around those sort of players. But yeah, it'll be great. And even with Cassius, man, just to mention that the other thing with Cassius, as much as it's going to be tough for him, I think he's also in an environment where he's, you know, just around a lot of quality. He's around star players. I mean, Insigne is a great player. Played for Ntsabeleng, PSG, you name it. He's one of those who played on more PlayStation, you know. And I think just being integrated and learning from those type of players, he might be able to like step up his level. But it's just more so the opportunities that, you know, we worried about. So maybe it might have been great for him to go out on loan, but maybe just makes use of, you know, the players that he's with, the experience that he can gain. It'll be great for him as well. But yeah, I believe that brings us to the end of our video. And thank you so much for tuning in. And for all of those who've been subscribing, sharing, thank you so much for doing that. It does not go unnoticed, but we do need to keep it going. So please do subscribe, share, and let's go ahead and like this video as well. And up until next time, I'll see you again in the next video of The Corner Flag.